Officer Marcus Rodriguez crouched behind the concrete barrier, sweat dripping from his forehead despite the cool underground air. The abandoned subway tunnel stretched into darkness ahead, lit only by the harsh white beams of tactical flashlights cutting through the gloom. 3 hours into what should have been a routine drug bust, everything had gone sideways. "Control, this is Bravo Team," Rodriguez whispered into his radio. "We've got movement in Tunnel Section C. Something's not right down here." Static crackled back. "Bravo Team, maintain position. Backup is 20 minutes out, 20 minutes. Rodriguez glanced at his team scattered along the tunnel walls. Jenkins was bleeding from a gash on his forehead, courtesy of whatever had thrown a chunk of concrete with inhuman strength. Patterson's Kevlar vest showed 3 distinct dents where something had struck him hard enough to knock the wind out of him, yet left no bullet holes. The sound came again, metal scraping against stone echoing from deeper in the tunnel. Rodriguez had been a SWAT officer for 12 years, had seen gang members on every drug imaginable, dealt with mentally unstable individuals, even handled a few domestic terrorists. But this was different. This felt ancient. "There," whispered Chen, the team's rookie, pointing toward a maintenance alcove 50 yards ahead. "I saw movement." Rodriguez squinted through the shadows. At first nothing. Then he saw it. A figure standing impossibly still in the alcove, as if it had been there for centuries. The shape was human-like, but wrong somehow, too tall and too rigid. Even from this distance, Rodriguez could see intricate details carved into what looked like armor, designs that seemed to shift and flow in the dancing light of their flashlights. "Sir?" Chen's voice cracked slightly. "That thing's been standing there for 15 minutes. Hasn't moved a muscle." Rodriguez studied the figure through his scope. The armor, if it was armor, appeared to be made of some dark metal that absorbed their light rather than reflecting it. Symbols and patterns covered every inch, symbols that hurt to look at directly, as if they belonged to some language never meant for human eyes. "Could be a statue," suggested Patterson, but his voice lacked conviction. As if responding to their whispers, the figure's head turned toward them with mechanical precision. No human moved like that. The motion was smooth, deliberate, and completely silent. Even from 50 yards away, Rodriguez could feel the weight of its gaze. "Contact, contact." Rodriguez shouted as the figure stepped out of the alcove. The thing moved with fluid grace, each step covering impossible distance. It didn't run, it glided, feet barely touching the ground. In its hands materialized a weapon that defied description, something between a spear and a staff, crackling with energy that made the air itself hum. Rodriguez opened fire, his M4 carbine chattering in the confined space. The bullet struck the figure's armor and simply vanished, absorbed into the dark metal without leaving so much as a scratch. The other officers followed suit, muzzle flashes strobing through the tunnel like a deadly light show. The tomb guard, because that's what Rodriguez's mind insisted on calling it, continued its advance, seemingly unaffected by the hail of gunfire. 20 yards, 15, 10. Rodriguez dropped his rifle and drew his taser, muscle memory taking over. He'd seen soldiers in full body armor continue fighting after taking multiple rounds, adrenaline carrying them forward until they finally dropped. Maybe electricity would work where bullets failed. "Get back," he yelled to his team as he aimed the taser. The tomb guard raised its weapon, that impossible spear staff beginning to glow with malevolent energy. The air around it shimmered like heat waves, and Rodriguez felt his skin prickle with static electricity. He pulled the trigger. The taser's probe struck the figure center mass, 50,000 volts of electricity coursing through the contacts. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the tomb guard convulsed, its weapon clattering to the ground as sparks danced across its armor. The glow faded, and with a sound like grinding stone, the figure toppled backward. "Holy shit," breathed Jenkins. It actually worked. Rodriguez stared at the fallen figure, barely believing what he'd just seen. The armor still bore those mind-bending symbols, but now they seemed dormant, lifeless. The weapon, whatever it was, had gone dark, looking more like an elaborate piece of metalwork than the energy projector it had been moments before. "Control, this is Bravo Team," Rodriguez reported, his voice steadier than he felt. "Suspect is down. We're going to need the bomb squad, maybe hazmat too, and someone who knows about archaeological artifacts." "Say again, Bravo Team." Before Rodriguez could respond, footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance behind them. Heavy measured steps that belonged to military boots, multiple sets moving with parade ground precision. Rodriguez turned, expecting to see backup officers or maybe FBI agents. Instead, he saw soldiers. Real soldiers, not SWAT, wearing uniforms he didn't recognize. They moved with the efficiency of special forces, weapons at the ready, eyes scanning every shadow. At their head walked a man whose bearing screamed authority even before Rodriguez noticed the 4 stars, glinting on his collar. The general, because there was no mistaking what he was, surveyed the scene with calculating eyes. His gaze moved from the fallen tomb guard to the scattered shell casings to Rodriguez and his team, taking in every detail with military precision. Officer Rodriguez, the general said, and Rodriguez felt his blood run cold. How did this man know his name? I'm General Harrison, Department of Anomalous Defense. We need to talk. Rodriguez looked at the general, then at the still form of the tomb guard, then back at the general. In 12 years of police work, he'd learned to read situations quickly. This wasn't a drug bust gone wrong. This wasn't even a normal day in an abnormal world. This was something else entirely. Sir, Rodriguez said carefully, I think there's been some kind of mistake. We were responding to reports of illegal activity in these tunnels. Drug manufacturing, possibly weapons dealing. General Harrison stepped closer to the fallen tomb guard, kneeling to examine it without touching. No mistake, officer. This tunnel system sits directly above one of the oldest archaeological sites in North America. A site that's been classified above your clearance level for the past 60 years. The general stood, fixing Rodriguez with a stare that had probably withered junior officers and foreign dignitaries alike. What you've just encountered, Officer Rodriguez, is a guardian, a sentinel left behind by a civilization that predates human history by millennia, and you, with a standard police taser, just accomplished something our best military scientists said was impossible. Rodriguez felt the world shifting beneath his feet, reality rearranging itself into something far stranger and more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Sir, I don't understand. You will, General Harrison said grimly. Because as of this moment, Officer Rodriguez, you're being recruited. Rodriguez watched as military personnel swarmed the tunnel, their movements coordinated with clockwork precision. Soldiers in hazmat suits approached the fallen tomb guard while others set up a perimeter that pushed his SWAT team back toward the entrance. Everything happened with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed operation. General, Rodriguez said, finding his voice. My team needs medical attention. Jenkins has a head wound, and Patterson is already being treated, Harrison interrupted, gesturing toward where combat medics were examining Rodriguez's men. My people arrived 30 minutes ago, officer. We've been monitoring this situation since your first radio call. 30 minutes. Rodriguez felt a chill run down his spine. You were listening to our communications? We monitor all emergency response calls within a 50-mile radius of classified sites, Harrison explained, watching as his soldiers photographed the tomb guard from every conceivable angle. When your team reported unusual resistance and impossible physical capabilities, we knew the barriers had been breached. Rodriguez stared at the general. Barriers? Harrison turned away from the activity around the Guardian and faced Rodriguez directly. Officer, what I'm about to tell you is classified at levels that don't officially exist. 63 years ago, construction workers breaking ground for the subway extension found something that wasn't supposed to be here. A tomb complex. Ancient beyond anything in the archaeological record. The general paused as a soldier approached with a tablet displaying readings Rodriguez didn't understand. Harrison glanced at the screen and nodded grimly before continuing. The tomb wasn't empty. Inside, we found 12 guardians like the one you just took down. 12 sentinels standing watch over something our best scientists still can't fully comprehend. They've been dormant since we first discovered them, powered down, inactive. Until today. Rodriguez watched as the hazmat team carefully lifted the tomb guard onto a specialized stretcher. Up close, the being looked even more unsettling. The armor wasn't quite metal. It seemed organic somehow, grown rather than forged. The symbols etched into its surface were moving again, slowly shifting in patterns that made Rodriguez's eyes water. What woke them up? Rodriguez asked. Unknown, Harrison admitted. But 12 hours ago, seismic monitors detected movement in the tomb complex. 6 hours ago, they registered massive energy spikes. 3 hours ago, that Guardian somehow made it past our security systems and into the tunnel network. A younger officer approached the general, saluting sharply. Sir, preliminary scans show the subject is still viable. Neural activity is minimal but present. The electrical discharge seems to have induced a temporary shutdown rather than permanent damage. Rodriguez felt his stomach drop. It's still alive? They're not technically alive in any sense we understand, Harrison said. They're constructs, Officer Rodriguez. Artificial beings created by whatever civilization built that tomb. But yes, this one is still functional. The implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. If one got out, what about the other 11? Harrison's expression darkened. Still in the tomb, still dormant, for now. Around them, the military operation continued with quiet efficiency. Rodriguez noticed they weren't just documenting the scene, they were completely sanitizing it. Every shell casing, every drop of blood, every scuff mark on the tunnel walls was being photographed, sampled, and removed. General, my team saw all this. They're going to have questions. Your team is being debriefed as we speak, Harrison said. They'll remember responding to reports of squatters in the tunnel. They'll remember a confused vagrant in elaborate costume who attacked when cornered. They'll remember you using your taser to subdue him. Rodriguez stared at the general in disbelief. You're going to wipe their memories? Selective memory adjustment, Harrison corrected. We're not monsters, officer. Your men will retain their core memories, their personalities, their training, but knowledge of what they saw here today will be edited. And me? Harrison studied Rodriguez with calculating eyes. That depends entirely on your next few decisions, Officer Rodriguez. You see, what you accomplished here today should have been impossible. We've tested every conventional weapon against Guardian technology. Bullets, explosives, chemical weapons, flamethrowers. Nothing gets through their defenses. Nothing. The general gestured toward where the tomb guard was being loaded into a specialized containment unit. Yet you stopped it with a civilian taser, a device that cost less than $200 and can be purchased at any sporting goods store. Rodriguez shook his head. I don't understand. It's just electricity. Exactly, Harrison said, and for the first time, Rodriguez detected something like excitement in the man's voice. Just electricity. The one form of energy we never thought to test comprehensively. The one approach our billion-dollar research program overlooked. A communications specialist approached with a secure phone. Harrison listened for a moment, then covered the receiver. The other 11 Guardians just activated, he told Rodriguez. Every alarm in the facility is screaming. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they breach containment. Rodriguez felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. What do you need from me? I need you to help us test a theory, Harrison said. I need you to prove that human ingenuity and a $200 taser can succeed where our most advanced military technology has failed. Around them, soldiers were packing up with the same efficiency they'd shown arriving. The tunnel was already looking normal again, as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened here. Only the faint scorch marks on the wall where the Guardian's weapon had fired remained as evidence of the encounter. Officer Rodriguez, Harrison, continued, I'm offering you the chance to join the Department of Anomalous Defense, to be part of something bigger than drug busts and domestic disturbances, to help protect humanity from threats it doesn't even know exist. Rodriguez looked at his team being loaded into military vehicles, their confused expressions suggesting the memory adjustment had already begun. Jenkins caught his eye and waved, apparently believing they'd just wrapped up a routine arrest. If I say no, then you'll wake up tomorrow remembering nothing more than they will, Harrison said simply. You'll go back to your regular duties, your regular life. Someone else will try to solve this problem with someone else's ideas. Rodriguez weighed his options. Everything he'd seen defied explanation. Everything he thought he knew about the world had been turned upside down in the space of an hour. But underneath the fear and confusion he felt something else. Curiosity. The same drive that had made him a good cop was now telling him there was more to this story. The other Guardians, Rodriguez said, if they're awake and trying to break out, what happens to the people above ground? To the civilians? Harrison's expression was grim. Best case scenario? Mass panic and property damage, worst-case scenario? He paused, watching as the last of the evidence was loaded into military vehicles. Let's just say that tomb exists for a reason, Officer Rodriguez. Something is buried down there. Something those guardians were left to protect, or keep contained. Rodriguez made his decision. What do you need me to do? General Harrison smiled for the first time since arriving. First, we get you cleared for a security level that officially doesn't exist. Then we see if lightning can strike twice. As they walked toward the tunnel entrance, Rodriguez couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving one life behind and stepping into another. The ordinary world of traffic stops and domestic disputes was fading into memory, replaced by something far more dangerous and infinitely more important. Above them, the city continued its normal rhythm, completely unaware that 12 ancient guardians were stirring in the depths below, and that humanity's best hope might be a SWAT officer with a taser and a willingness to think outside the box. The elevator descended for what felt like forever. Rodriguez watched the numbers on the display climb past basement levels he didn't know existed. B15, B20, B25. At B30, the numbers switched to letters and symbols he didn't recognize. How deep does this thing go? Rodriguez asked. Deep enough, Harrison replied. The tomb complex extends down another 40 levels below this facility. We've only explored the first 10. The elevator finally stopped with a soft chime that seemed absurdly normal given the circumstances. The doors opened onto a sight that made Rodriguez's breath catch in his throat. They stood at the edge of a vast underground facility that stretched beyond the limits of his vision. Catwalks and platforms connected massive cylindrical structures that pulsed with soft blue light. The air hummed with electricity and purpose. Welcome to Facility Cerberus, Harrison said, leading Rodriguez onto the main platform. Home to the Department of Anomalous Defense since 1962. Scientists and military personnel moved between workstations with focused intensity. Massive screens displayed data streams, energy readings, and what looked like architectural blueprints of impossible complexity. Rodriguez had seen federal facilities before, but nothing like this. This wasn't just advanced, it was otherworldly. General Harrison, a woman in a lab coat, jogged toward them, tablet in hand. The containment grid is fluctuating. Guardian 7 just went active and the resonance is affecting the others. Harrison cursed under his breath. Dr. Chen, meet Officer Rodriguez. He's the one who took down Guardian 1 with standard police equipment. Dr. Chen looked Rodriguez up and down with obvious skepticism. This is your solution? A street cop? This street cop accomplished in 30 seconds what your research team hasn't managed in 6 decades. Harrison replied sharply. What's the current situation? Dr. Chen led them toward a bank of monitors showing what Rodriguez assumed was the tomb complex. Each screen displayed a different chamber, and in several of them he could see the Guardians. They stood in alcoves along the walls, identical to the one he'd encountered, except these were glowing with increasing intensity. Guardian 1 was somehow the trigger, Dr. Chen explained. When you disabled it, the others began waking up in sequence. We're seeing massive energy spikes throughout the complex. It's like they're communicating with each other. Rodriguez studied the screens. The Guardians weren't moving yet, but they were clearly active. The symbols on their armor pulsed in synchronized patterns, and their weapons were beginning to manifest that same ominous glow he'd seen in the tunnel. How long before they break containment? Harrison asked. At current escalation rates? 6 hours, maybe less. Dr. Chen brought up another screen showing a cross-section of the tomb complex. The containment field was never designed to hold them while active. It was built to maintain the stasis they've been in for centuries. Rodriguez leaned closer to the monitors. What happens if they all get out? Dr. Chen and Harrison exchanged a look that told Rodriguez more than he wanted to know. We don't know exactly, Dr. Chen admitted, but the tomb complex sits directly under the city's main water treatment facility. 2 major subway lines, and the foundation supports for 3 downtown skyscrapers. If they fight their way to the surface, mass casualties, Harrison finished grimly. And that's assuming they stop at just breaking out. Rodriguez watched the Guardians on the screens, noting how their glow was intensifying. What are they protecting down there? What's in the deeper levels? Harrison was quiet for a long moment. We call it the Vault. It's a chamber about 60 levels down, sealed with technology we can't even begin to understand. The Guardians were positioned between our world and whatever's in there. Have you tried to open it? Once, Dr. Chen said. In 1987, we managed to get a probe through the outer barrier. It transmitted for exactly 3 seconds before the signal cut out. What did it show? Harrison pulled up a classified file on the nearest terminal. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage that made Rodriguez's head ache just looking at it. Shapes that seemed to move through dimensions. Shadows that cast light instead of darkness, and in the center of it all, something that his mind refused to process. We lost 12 researchers to psychotic breaks after viewing this footage, Harrison explained. Whatever's down there, it's not meant for human perception. Rodriguez forced himself to look away from the screen. And the Guardians are the only thing standing between us and that? Were, Dr. Chen corrected. Past tense. Once they're fully active, the old programming might not hold. They might decide that humans are a bigger threat than whatever they were left to guard. An alarm began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and personnel moved with increased urgency. A voice over the intercom announced, "Alert level red. Guardian activation cascade accelerating. All personnel to emergency stations." That's not good, Harrison muttered, checking his tablet. Guardian 4 just went fully active. It's testing the containment barriers. Rodriguez watched the screens as one of the Guardians stepped out of its alcove for the first time in centuries. The movement was fluid, purposeful, and terrifying. The being raised its weapon and pointed it directly at the camera. Energy coursed along the length of the staff, building to a crescendo that made the screen flicker. "It knows we're watching," Rodriguez said. The Guardian fired. The screen went to static. "Guardian 4 has breached its containment chamber," Dr. Chen reported, her voice tight with professional calm. "Estimated arrival at the main facility levels in 40 minutes. Harrison turned to Rodriguez. "Officer, I need to ask something of you that goes far beyond any reasonable duty. I need you to go down there and try your taser on the active Guardians." Rodriguez stared at him. "You want me to go into those chambers? With the things that just woke up after centuries and are probably very angry about it? I want you to help us test whether your success was a fluke or if we've finally found their weakness," Harrison said. "Officer Rodriguez, you're looking at humanity's last hope. Our weapons don't work. Our technology doesn't work. But somehow your approach did." Rodriguez looked around the facility, at the dozens of scientists and military personnel working frantically to contain a threat they barely understood. He thought about his team, about the city above, about millions of people going about their daily lives with no idea what lurked beneath their feet. "What makes you think it will work again?" Dr. Chen brought up another display, this one showing energy pattern analyses. "We've been studying the data from your encounter with Guardian 1. The electrical discharge from your taser created a cascade failure in its power systems. It's like using an electromagnetic pulse on a computer. Sudden, overwhelming electrical input that triggers a protective shutdown. But these Guardians are active now," Rodriguez pointed out. "Their defenses are up. Won't that make a difference?" "Maybe," Harrison admitted. "Or maybe their active state will make them more vulnerable to electrical disruption. We won't know until we try." Rodriguez watched as more screens went to static, more Guardians breaking free of their containment chambers. The facility around them vibrated slightly as something deep below began moving with tremendous force. "How do I get down there?" Harrison smiled grimly. "Very carefully, Officer Rodriguez." Very carefully indeed. Dr. Chen was already pulling up schematics on her tablet. "There's a service tunnel that connects to the tomb complex. It's narrow, but it should get you close enough to engage Guardian 4 before it reaches the main facility." Rodriguez checked his equipment belt. His taser had 2 shots remaining after the encounter in the subway tunnel. "I'm going to need more than one taser." "Already arranged," Harrison said. "We've got a dozen units charging plus backup batteries. If your theory is correct, we're going to give you everything you need to shut down this threat." As if responding to their conversation, another alarm sounded. This one was different, deeper, more urgent. "Guardian 7 is moving," Dr. Chen announced, "and Guardian 3 just activated." Rodriguez felt the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders. In the space of a few hours, he'd gone from chasing drug dealers to standing between humanity and an ancient threat beyond comprehension. But as he watched the chaos unfolding around him, he realized something important. He was exactly where he needed to be. "All right, General," Rodriguez said, checking his gear one final time. "Let's see if lightning really can strike twice." Rodriguez moved through the service tunnel with practiced stealth, his tactical training serving him well in the cramped confines. The tunnel was barely wide enough for his shoulders. and strange bioluminescent strips along the walls provided just enough light to see. Behind him, he dragged a modified equipment pack containing 6 tasers, extra batteries, and a few surprises Dr. Chen had insisted on including. "Rodriguez, this is Control." Harrison's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Guardian 4 has reached level B35. You should intersect its path in approximately 50 meters. "Copy that," Rodriguez whispered back. "Any change in its behavior patterns?" "Negative. It's moving with purpose toward the main facility. Whatever its programming is telling it to do, it considers us a priority target." Rodriguez reached the end of the service tunnel and peered through the access grate. Beyond lay a corridor that belonged in no human structure. The walls curved in impossible ways, covered with the same shifting symbols he'd seen on the Guardian's armor. Soft light emanated from no visible source, casting shadows that seemed to move independently of any objects that might create them. "Control, I'm at the intersection point. No sign of the target yet. Rodriguez, be advised, we're reading massive energy spikes from your location. The Guardian is close." As if summoned by Harrison's words, a sound echoed through the corridor. Not footsteps, but something else. A harmonic resonance that made Rodriguez's teeth ache. The Guardian was singing, or at least producing something that his human brain interpreted as song. The melody was beautiful and terrible, like hearing the death cry of stars. Rodriguez quietly removed the access grate and slipped into the corridor. The architecture around him defied logic. Stairs that led sideways, arches that connected to nothing, walls that seemed to extend further than the space should allow. He fought down a wave of disorientation and focused on the task at hand. The singing grew louder. Rodriguez pressed himself against the wall as Guardian 4 rounded the corner. Up close in its active state, the being was even more imposing than its dormant counterpart had been. The armor flowed like liquid metal, constantly reshaping itself while maintaining its overall form. The symbols carved into its surface blazed with inner fire, and its weapon, a crystalline staff that existed in too many dimensions at once, hummed with barely contained power. The Guardian paused, its head turning toward Rodriguez's hiding spot with mechanical precision. For a terrifying moment, Rodriguez thought he'd been detected. Then the being continued its march toward the facility levels, apparently dismissing whatever minor disturbance it had sensed. Rodriguez waited until the Guardian was 20 feet away, then made his move. "Contact!" He shouted into his comm as he emerged from cover, taser raised. The Guardian spun toward him with impossible speed, its weapon already charging. Energy coursed along the crystalline length, building to a discharge that would turn Rodriguez into component atoms. But human reflexes, honed by years of split-second decisions in dangerous situations, served him well. Rodriguez fired first. The taser's probe struck the Guardian center mass, and 50,000 volts coursed through its form. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Guardian convulsed, its weapon discharge going wide and carving a molten furrow in the wall. Sparks danced across its armor as its system struggled to cope with the electrical overload. But this Guardian was active, its defenses fully powered. After a moment of disruption, it began to adapt. Rodriguez watched in horror as the being's armor shifted, routing the electrical current away from vital systems. The Guardian straightened, raising its weapon again. Rodriguez dove sideways as another energy blast scorched the air where he'd been standing. "Control, the taser worked, but only temporarily," Rodriguez shouted as he rolled behind a structural support that definitely hadn't been there a moment ago. "The Guardian adapted to the electrical attack. Rodriguez, you need to try a different approach." Dr. Chen's voice came through his earpiece. "The facility's power grid is showing fluctuations. Whatever you did affected more than just the Guardian." Rodriguez risked a glance around his cover. The Guardian was advancing again, moving with predatory grace. But something was different. The symbols on its armor were flickering, cycling through patterns faster than before. The being's movements, while still fluid, showed a slight hesitation that hadn't been there previously. "It's confused," Rodriguez realized. The electrical disruption affected its processing somehow. An idea formed in Rodriguez's mind, the kind of desperate improvisation that had kept him alive through 12 years of police work. He pulled out 2 more tasers and checked the modified equipment pack Dr. Chen had given him. "Control, I need you to cut power to level B35, all of it. Rodriguez, that will leave you in complete darkness with a hostile Guardian." Harrison protested. Trust me on this one, General. The lights went out, darkness fell like a physical weight, absolute and impenetrable. Rodriguez closed his eyes and relied on his other senses. The Guardian's harmonic singing had changed pitch, becoming discordant, uncertain. It was as disoriented by the sudden darkness as Rodriguez was, but Rodriguez had expected it. Rodriguez moved by memory and instinct, counting steps and using the wall to guide him. The Guardian's energy weapon provided brief flashes of illumination as it fired blindly, trying to locate its target. Each shot revealed the being's position for a split second. Flash. The Guardian was 15 feet away. Weapon raised, flash 10 feet, turning toward Rodriguez's previous position. Flash 5 feet. Weapon pointing past Rodriguez's current location. Rodriguez struck from behind, using all 3 tasers simultaneously. 2 struck the Guardian's back while the third connected with the base of its neck. 150,000 volts coursed through the being's systems all at once. This time, the Guardian went down hard. Emergency lighting flickered on as the being crashed to the floor, its armor dark and lifeless. Rodriguez stood over it, breathing heavily, all 3 tasers smoking from the massive electrical discharge. Control, Guardian 4 is down. Repeat, Guardian 4 is neutralized. Cheers erupted over the comm channel before Harrison's voice cut through. Outstanding work, Rodriguez. But we've got a problem. The other Guardians are reacting to Guardian 4's defeat. They're all going active simultaneously. Rodriguez looked down at his empty tasers, then at the Guardian's prone form. The being's armor was already beginning to show faint flickers of light. Whatever he'd accomplished, it might only be temporary. How many are left active? 10. Dr. Chen's voice was tight with stress. And they're not moving randomly anymore. They're coordinating, Rodriguez. They're learning from your tactics. Rodriguez considered this development as he reloaded his tasers with fresh batteries. The implications were both terrifying and encouraging. Terrifying because it meant the Guardians were more intelligent than anyone had realized. Encouraging because intelligence meant they could be outthought. Control. I need a tactical assessment. Where are the Guardians concentrating their advance? They're converging on the main facility levels from 3 different routes, Harrison replied. Classic pincer movement. These things have military tactics. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Good, that means they think like soldiers. And I've been dealing with tactical situations my entire career. He started moving deeper into the complex, toward where the remaining Guardians were advancing. Control, I'm going to need that power grid manipulation again. And patch me through to the facility's environmental controls. Rodriguez, what are you thinking? I'm thinking these Guardians were designed to operate in specific environmental conditions, Rodriguez said, checking his remaining equipment. They've been dormant for centuries in a controlled environment. Let's see how they handle some good old-fashioned human improvisation. As Rodriguez moved through the ancient corridors, past architecture that hurt to look at directly and symbols that whispered in languages that predated human speech, he felt something he hadn't expected. Confidence. The Guardians might be ancient and powerful, but they were predictable. They followed patterns, operated on programming that hadn't been updated in millennia. Humans, on the other hand, specialized in chaos, in thinking outside established parameters, in finding solutions that no logical system would consider optimal. Control. I'm about to show these ancient constructs why you never corner a human with nothing left to lose. Rodriguez disappeared into the depths of the facility, carrying humanity's hopes and 6 tasers into a confrontation that would determine the fate of everyone above. Rodriguez crouched in the facility's environmental control chamber, surrounded by banks of monitors and control systems that managed everything, from air circulation to temperature regulation, throughout the underground complex. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through his earpiece as she guided him through the facility's systems. Rodriguez, I'm showing 3 groups of Guardians converging on your position. 2 Guardians approaching from the north corridor, 3 from the east, and 4 coming up from the lower levels. Copy that, Control. Beginning environmental modifications now. Rodriguez's fingers flew across the control panels, adjusting settings with the confidence of someone who'd spent years learning to operate under pressure. The Guardians might be ancient and powerful, but they'd been dormant in a carefully controlled environment for centuries. Time to see how they handled some unexpected variables. First modification, atmospheric pressure, Rodriguez muttered, increasing the air pressure in the eastern corridor by 30%. Let's see how those ancient sensors handle a pressure differential. The nearest monitor showed Guardian 7 and Guardian 9 moving through the affected corridor. Their progress immediately slowed as their systems struggled to compensate for the unexpected atmospheric change. The symbols on their armor flickered erratically as internal mechanisms worked to adapt. Rodriguez, the Guardians in the Eastern Corridor are showing signs of disorientation, Dr. Chen reported. Their movement patterns are becoming irregular. Good. Now, for modification number 2. Rodriguez, access the facility's heating system and crank the temperature in the northern corridor to 90 degrees Fahrenheit while simultaneously dropping the lower level temperature to near freezing. The ancient beings had been dormant at a constant 68 degrees for decades. Rapid temperature changes should play havoc with their thermal regulation systems. Environmental warfare, Rodriguez said with satisfaction. Bet your ancient programmers never planned for that. The Guardians approaching from the lower levels were the first to show effects. Guardian 3 stopped mid-stride as ice began forming on its armor. Its weapon flickered and dimmed as its energy systems diverted power to thermal regulation. Guardian 11 actually stumbled, its smooth gliding gait disrupted by the sudden temperature shift. Rodriguez, you magnificent bastard, Harrison's voice came through the comm. Guardian 3 just shut down completely. The cold overwhelmed its thermal systems. 1 down, 8 to go, Rodriguez replied. But he wasn't finished with his environmental modifications. The complex's lighting system was next. Rodriguez began cycling the illumination through different spectrums. Infrared, ultraviolet, full-spectrum white, then complete darkness in rapid succession. The Guardians relied heavily on their optical sensors, and the constant changes would force their systems to continuously recalibrate. On the monitors, Rodriguez watched as the remaining Guardians began moving erratically. Their coordinated advance dissolved into confused wandering as their visual systems struggled to adapt to the constantly changing light conditions. Control, I need you to activate the facility's emergency ventilation system. Maximum air circulation. Rodriguez, that will create hurricane-force winds in some sections. Exactly. The ventilation system roared to life, and suddenly the corridors became wind tunnels. The Guardians, built for grace and precision movement, found themselves fighting against 40-mile-per-hour gusts. Guardian 7, caught in the Eastern Corridor's pressure differential and high winds, was actually blown backward into a wall. Rodriguez watched the chaos unfold on his monitors with grim satisfaction. The Guardians were incredibly advanced, but they'd been designed for specific operational parameters. Humans, on the other hand, had evolved to survive in constantly changing conditions. They thrived on chaos and unpredictability. Time for the next phase, Rodriguez said, grabbing his remaining tasers and heading for the corridor junction, where the confused Guardians would converge. The facility's corridor system led to a central hub where all 3 Guardian groups would eventually meet. Rodriguez reached the position first and began setting up what could only be described as an electrical ambush. Using extension cords and power strips salvaged from various equipment stations, he rigged up a network of tasers positioned at multiple angles throughout the chamber. Rodriguez, what exactly are you doing? Dr. Chen asked. Remember how Guardian 4 adapted to a single electrical attack? Well, let's see how they handle electrical attacks from 6 different directions simultaneously, while dealing with environmental chaos they were never designed to handle. Rodriguez connected the final wire just as Guardian 7 stumbled into the central hub, its systems still reeling from the pressure changes and wind buffeting. The being's armor was cycling through error patterns, and its weapon was only functioning at partial power. Sorry about this, Rodriguez said as he triggered his improvised electrical network. 6 tasers fired at once from different positions around the chamber. The Guardian was caught in a web of electrical discharge that overwhelmed its adaptive systems. While it tried to root around one electrical attack, 5 others struck from unexpected angles. The being convulsed and collapsed, its armor going completely dark. Guardian 7 is down, Rodriguez reported. And here come the others. Guardian 9 appeared at the chamber entrance, moving cautiously. Its systems had learned from Guardian 7's fate, but Rodriguez was already adapting his tactics. Instead of triggering another electrical barrage, he activated a different surprise. The fire suppression system. High-pressure foam erupted from ceiling nozzles, filling the chamber with thick, electrically conductive material. Guardian 9 disappeared into the white cloud, its optical sensors completely blinded. Rodriguez could hear it moving through the foam, trying to locate him by sound. Big mistake. Rodriguez moved silently through the foam using techniques learned in urban combat training. The Guardian might have enhanced sensors, but Rodriguez had human intuition and the ability to think 3 steps ahead. He positioned himself behind the confused being and struck with 2 tasers simultaneously. The electrically conductive foam amplified the effect dramatically. Guardian 9 went down harder than any of its predecessors, its systems completely overwhelmed by the combination of electrical attack and environmental factors. 2 more down, Rodriguez announced, but we've got bigger problems incoming. The remaining Guardians from the lower levels had finally adapted to the temperature changes and were approaching fast. But something had changed in their behavior. They were no longer moving with the precise coordination they'd shown earlier. Instead, they moved with something that looked almost like caution. Rodriguez, Dr. Chen's voice carried a note of amazement. The remaining Guardians are exhibiting what can only be described as learning behavior. They're not just adapting to your attacks, they're anticipating them. Rodriguez wiped foam from his face and checked his remaining equipment. Good. That means they're thinking instead of just following programming, and thinking opponents can be psyched out. He keyed his comm to broadcast on all frequencies, including whatever spectrum the Guardians used for communication. Attention, remaining Guardians. This is Officer Marcus Rodriguez of the human SWAT team. I've just taken down 3 of your number using equipment that costs less than a decent dinner for 2. Your ancient technology, your perfect coordination, your energy weapons. None of it matters when you're facing human creativity. The effect was immediate. The remaining Guardians stopped their advance entirely. You see, the thing about humans, Rodriguez continued, moving through the facility's service corridors to his next ambush point, is that we don't follow the rules. We improvise, we adapt. We find solutions that no logical system would consider, because we're not entirely logical ourselves. We're chaotic, unpredictable, and absolutely relentless when we're protecting our home. On the monitors, Rodriguez could see the Guardians conferring with each other, their armor symbols pulsing in rapid communication patterns. They were reassessing the threat, recalculating their approach. But Rodriguez was already 3 moves ahead. Your creators built you to handle known threats according to established parameters, Rodriguez said as he rigged up his next surprise in the facility's main power distribution chamber. But humans are an unknown variable. We're the thing your programmers never anticipated. Rodriguez finished his preparations and settled in to wait. The remaining Guardians would come eventually. Their programming would demand it. But now they would come afraid, uncertain, facing an enemy that didn't behave according to any logical pattern they could comprehend. Control, this is Rodriguez. Environmental warfare phase complete. Beginning psychological warfare phase. These ancient constructs are about to learn why humans are the most dangerous species they've ever encountered. In the depths of the facility, ancient Guardians designed to protect secrets, older than civilization, tried to calculate the probability of success. Against a single human with a handful of tasers and an unwillingness to accept defeat, they were discovering that some variables simply couldn't be calculated. Rodriguez waited in the power distribution chamber, surrounded by the electrical infrastructure that fed the entire facility. He'd spent the last hour rigging what could only be described as the world's most dangerous improvised electrical grid. High-voltage cables snaked across the floor, connected to modified tasers, backup generators, and every electrical device he could salvage from the facility's equipment stores. Rodriguez, the remaining Guardians have stopped moving entirely, Dr. Chen reported through his earpiece. They've been stationary for 20 minutes now. They're thinking, Rodriguez replied, making final adjustments to his electrical web. Trying to calculate odds, assess risk factors, develop new tactical approaches. The problem is they're thinking like machines. And you're thinking like what exactly? Harrison's voice carried a note of concern. Like a human being who's really pissed off and running out of patience. Rodriguez keyed his comm to the Guardian frequency again. Guardians, this is your final warning. You've got 60 seconds to power down and return to your alcoves. After that, I'm coming for all of you at once. The response was immediate and unexpected. One of the Guardians spoke. The voice that came through Rodriguez's comm system was like crystalline wind chimes mixed with the sound of grinding stone. When it formed words, they were in perfect, unaccented English. Human designation Rodriguez. We acknowledge your tactical superiority in environmental warfare. We acknowledge your capacity for unpredictable problem solving. We request communication. Rodriguez blinked in surprise. Control, did that thing just ask to talk? Affirmative, Dr. Chen replied, excitement clear in her voice. This is the first recorded instance of Guardian communication with humans. Rodriguez, whatever you've been doing, it's changed their fundamental behavioral patterns. Rodriguez considered his options. The smart tactical move would be to press his advantage, take down the remaining Guardians while they were confused and hesitant. But the cop in him was curious. 30 years of interrogating suspects had taught him that sometimes the most important information came when the other party wanted to talk. All right, Guardian. Which one am I talking to? We are Guardian Prime. We speak for the collective. Human Rodriguez, your tactical approaches have exceeded all parameters in our threat assessment database. You have demonstrated capabilities that contradict our understanding of human limitations. Rodriguez frowned. Something about the Guardian's phrasing bothered him. What threat assessment database? How long have you been watching humans? There was a pause that lasted long enough for Rodriguez to wonder if the connection had been lost. Then Guardian Prime spoke again. We have been observing human development for 2,147 of your years. Our creators left us with specific parameters regarding acceptable levels of human technological advancement. You have exceeded those parameters. The implications hit Rodriguez like a physical blow. You've been watching us for almost 3,000 years. The tomb isn't ancient, it's a monitoring station. Correct. The vault below contains not artifacts of our creators, but a quantum communication device maintaining contact with our home civilization. We were left to ensure human development remained within acceptable limits. Rodriguez felt anger building in his chest. Acceptable limits? You've been holding back human progress for 3 millennia? When necessary. The facility your people call Cerberus was constructed precisely above our monitoring station to contain evidence of several significant technological breakthroughs. The disappearance of certain human scientists and inventors over the centuries was required. You've been murdering people, Rodriguez said, his voice deadly quiet. We have been protecting the galaxy from a species whose development trajectory indicated potential threat levels, exceeding containment parameters. Rodriguez looked around the power distribution chamber, at the improvised electrical grid he'd built from spare parts and desperate ingenuity. And now? Now you have demonstrated that individual humans, operating without advanced technology, can overcome defensive systems that have contained threats for millennia. Our threat assessment protocols require immediate escalation. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. Escalation to what? Elimination protocol. Complete sterilization of human civilization to prevent galactic contamination. Rodriguez closed his eyes for a moment, processing the magnitude of what he'd just learned. Humanity had been living under a sword of Damocles for thousands of years, watched by alien guardians who saw them as a potential threat to be contained or eliminated. And his actions today had apparently pushed humanity past some cosmic red line. Guardian Prime, I have a question for you. We will acknowledge human curiosity before implementing elimination protocols. In all your calculations, in all your threat assessments and behavioral analyses, did you ever consider that humans might surprise you? Another pause. Clarification required. Rodriguez smiled grimly and began moving through his electrical grid, making final connections. See, the thing about humans is that we're predictably unpredictable. You've been watching us for 3,000 years, but you've been watching us in isolation. You've never seen what humans are really capable of when we know we're fighting for our survival. Human Rodriguez, your individual capabilities have been assessed. They are insufficient to prevent elimination protocols. You're absolutely right, Rodriguez agreed. One human with some tasers and a bad attitude isn't going to stop an alien genocide. But that's not what you're dealing with anymore. Rodriguez triggered his comm system, broadcasting on every frequency the facility possessed. Control, this is Rodriguez. Everything we've done here today has been monitored by hostile alien intelligence. They've been manipulating human development for 3,000 years, and they're about to implement what they call elimination protocols for our entire species. The response was immediate chaos. Every comm channel lit up as the revelation spread through the facility's personnel. Scientists, military officers, technicians, everyone began talking at once. Guardian Prime, Rodriguez continued, still moving through his electrical grid. You made one critical error in your threat assessment. Specify error. You assessed me as an individual threat, but humans don't operate as individuals when survival is at stake. We operate as a collective, and right now every human in this facility knows exactly what you are and what you're planning. The lights in the chamber flickered as Rodriguez reached the main power coupling. Above him, he could hear the sound of the facility going into full alert mode. Emergency klaxons, running footsteps shouted orders. The entire human population of the underground complex was mobilizing. Guardian Prime, you wanted to see what humans are capable of when they exceed your parameters? You're about to find out. Rodriguez grabbed the main power coupling with both hands. 50,000 volts of electrical power, meant to feed the entire facility's systems, coursed through his body and into the electrical grid he'd spent an hour rigging throughout the chamber. The resulting electrical discharge was visible from 3 levels away. Every piece of electronic equipment in the chamber overloaded simultaneously, creating an electromagnetic pulse that propagated through the facility's power grid like a tsunami of electrical energy. In the tomb complex below, 6 remaining Guardians experienced simultaneous catastrophic system failures as the electromagnetic wave overwhelmed their quantum processing cores. Ancient technology, designed to operate within specific parameters for millennia, simply couldn't cope with the chaotic surge of uncontrolled human engineering. Rodriguez collapsed to the floor, his body smoking but alive. The facility's emergency medical team would later describe his survival as impossible, attributing it to adrenaline, luck, and what one doctor called sheer bloody-minded human stubbornness. Control, Rodriguez whispered into his comm as medics rushed toward his position. All Guardians down. Threat neutralized. And General? Rodriguez, hang on. Medics are en route. Tell the boys upstairs that humanity just graduated from the minor leagues. We've got some phone calls to make. In the depths of the facility, ancient quantum communication equipment began transmitting an emergency signal across interstellar space, carrying a message that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Containment failed. Human capabilities exceed all projections. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact. Somewhere in the distant stars, an alien civilization received that message and began reassessing everything they thought they knew about the small blue planet they'd been monitoring for thousands of years. Rodriguez smiled as the medics reached him. Humanity was about to become very interesting. 6 months later, Rodriguez stood in what had once been the tomb complex's deepest chamber, now converted into humanity's first interstellar communication center. The vault that had once contained alien monitoring equipment now housed a diplomatic facility where humans conducted daily conversations with 17 different alien civilizations. Officer Rodriguez, General Harrison approached, though his title had changed significantly since that day in the tunnels. He now wore the insignia of the newly formed Department of Interstellar Relations. The consortium delegation is ready for your briefing. Rodriguez adjusted his new uniform, no longer SWAT gear, but the formal dress of Earth's first xenological tactical specialist. The title still made him chuckle. 6 months ago, he'd been chasing drug dealers. Now he was humanity's primary expert on alien psychology and unconventional warfare. How many species this time, General? 43, Harrison replied with a grin. Word is spreading across the galaxy about the humans who defeated their Guardians with improvised electrical weapons. Everyone wants to meet the tactical specialist who convinced an entire galactic monitoring network to recommend diplomatic contact instead of extermination. Rodriguez walked through the communication center, past banks of quantum transmitters that allowed real-time conversation across interstellar distances. The technology was a gift from the Guardians' creators, the Vex High Collective, as part of their formal apology for millennia of covert interference in human development. Sir, a young technician called out from her station, we're receiving priority transmissions from the Andromedan Trade Federation. They're requesting consultation on a tactical irregularity in their border systems. Rodriguez nodded. Tell them I'll be available for conference in an hour. Standard consultation fee applies. It had taken exactly 3 weeks for human tactical expertise to become the most sought-after commodity in known space. Aliens, it turned out, were fascinated by humanity's approach to problem-solving. Where other species approached challenges with logic, advanced technology, and millennia of established protocols, humans approached them with creativity, improvisation, and what the galactic community had started calling beneficial chaos theory. Rodriguez, Dr. Chen approached with a tablet displaying the latest intelligence reports. She now headed the newly formed Institute for Human Strategic Studies, a think tank dedicated to understanding why human tactical approaches worked so effectively against superior technology. The Kepler Defense Union is reporting another successful implementation of Rodriguez protocols in their conflict with the Silicon hegemony. Rodriguez reviewed the report. A vastly outnumbered human tactical advisor had helped the Kepler forces defeat a technologically superior enemy by introducing unpredictable variables into what had been a conventional space battle. Environmental warfare on a stellar scale, using solar wind patterns and asteroid field dynamics to disrupt enemy formations. 17 successful implementations this month, Dr. Chen continued. The galactic military academies are now teaching human tactical theory as a required course. Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. Dr. Chen, 6 months ago you thought I was just a street cop who got lucky with a taser. 6 months ago, I didn't understand that getting lucky was actually a sophisticated approach to tactical problem solving that no other known species had developed. They reached the main communication chamber where representatives from 43 different alien civilizations waited in holographic form. The assembly looked like something from humanity's wildest science fiction dreams. Beings of crystalline energy, aquatic entities in environmental suits, gas cloud intelligences speaking through mechanical translators, and dozens of other forms that defied easy categorization. Honored Specialist Rodriguez, the primary speaker, was a Vexi collective mind, similar to but distinct from the Guardian constructs. We greet you on behalf of the assembled civilizations. Thank you for the invitation, Rodriguez replied. I understand you have questions about human tactical doctrine. Indeed. The recent developments in the Kepler sector have caused significant interest in what your people call thinking outside the box. We wish to understand how humans consistently develop solutions that exceed computational probability models. Rodriguez looked around the assembled aliens, each representing civilizations thousands of years older than humanity, many possessing technology that seemed like magic to human understanding. Yet here they were, asking him to explain human nature. The answer is actually pretty simple, Rodriguez said. We're not trying to be unpredictable. We're just trying to survive using whatever tools we have available. Most species develop along technological lines. You solve problems by building better tools. Humans solve problems by finding new ways to use the tools we already have. A crystalline entity that identified itself as a representative of the quantum builders spoke up. But surely this approach must be inefficient. Why develop new applications for existing tools when superior tools can be constructed? Rodriguez smiled. Because sometimes there isn't time to build superior tools. Sometimes you have to stop the threat right now with whatever's in your pocket, and sometimes the thing in your pocket turns out to be exactly what the situation needs. Like a police taser defeating quantum-enhanced Guardian constructs? Asked an aquatic representative. Exactly like that. The Guardians were designed to handle known threats using established parameters. They had defenses against energy weapons, kinetic weapons, chemical attacks, everything their creators could imagine. But they weren't prepared for electrical disruption delivered in a tactically improvised manner by someone who was making it up. As he went along, the assembled aliens murmured among themselves in various forms of communication, sound waves, light patterns, electromagnetic pulses, and methods Rodriguez couldn't even perceive. Specialist Rodriguez, the Vex High representative continued, we have a proposal. The galactic community would like to establish a formal human tactical advisory council. Your species would provide strategic consultation to any civilization facing seemingly insurmountable odds. Rodriguez considered this carefully. What's in it for humanity? Full galactic citizenship, access to technologies and knowledge bases accumulated over millions of years, and most importantly, recognition as the galaxy's premier tactical innovators. And in return, you teach us to think like humans. Rodriguez looked at General Harrison, who nodded slightly. They'd discussed this possibility for months. Humanity's unique approach to problem-solving had turned them from a monitored potential threat into the galaxy's most valuable strategic resource. Accepted, Rodriguez said, but with conditions. Name them. First, humanity retains full autonomy in our own territory. No more monitoring, no more interference in our development. We evolve at our own pace in our own way. Agreed. Second, any species requesting tactical consultation must be willing to learn human methods, not just implement human solutions. We're not mercenaries. We're teachers. Agreed. Third, humanity gets full disclosure about galactic history, politics, and any other species that might see us as a threat. No more surprises. Agreed. Rodriguez nodded to the assembled representatives. Then welcome to the human era of galactic relations. Fair warning, things are about to get a lot more interesting around here. As the diplomatic session concluded and the alien holographs faded away, Rodriguez found himself alone with Harrison in the communication chamber. Through the reinforced windows, they could see construction crews working on humanity's first interstellar embassy complex. "You know what the funny thing is, Rodriguez?" Harrison asked. "What's that, General?" 3,000 years ago, the aliens put guardians here because they thought human development was dangerous and unpredictable. Turns out they were absolutely right." Rodriguez laughed. "They just didn't realize that dangerous and unpredictable could also mean useful and necessary. Sometimes the galaxy needs a little chaos to shake things up. And now?" Rodriguez looked out at the construction crews, at the quantum communication arrays, at the bustling activity of humanity's first steps into galactic civilization. "Now we get to show 43 alien species what human ingenuity can accomplish when we're not being held back by ancient fears and outdated parameters. Think they can handle it?" Rodriguez grinned, the same expression he'd worn 6 months ago when he'd decided to taser an ancient tomb guard with a cheap police-issue weapon. "General, they asked for help learning to think like humans. They have no idea what they just signed up for." In the depths of space, alien civilizations prepared to learn that sometimes the most advanced solution was also the simplest one, and that 3,000 years of careful monitoring had taught them absolutely nothing about what humans were truly capable of when they stopped trying to meet other species' expectations and started being themselves. The galaxy would never be the same again, and Rodriguez couldn't wait to see what happened next.